couple of things from the slide presentation that hopefully you all had a chance to preview. Every time we have an opportunity not to insert ourselves into the game, we should take advantage of it. We are clearly looking just for distinctive advantages that are unintended by the rules. We're also looking to deal with player safety issues and unsporting acts. Other than that, we need to let the players play to the degree that they will allow us to do so. So the first thing we have to do is make sure that we understand, for instance, that a block in the back is not a safety foul compared to an illegal low block or a clipping block. Those are dangerous situations, as well as other things here: targeting, face mask, clipping, chop blocks, all those sorts of things. And then the aforementioned behavioral issues. There's no latitude when it comes to safety or conduct of the sideline or players. A big thing here is we need to presume that all action on the field is legal until it's proven that it's not. So let's presume the action is innocent as opposed to a foul. Keep in mind that the first foul you call as a crew in any category, whether it be DPI, block in the back, holding, defensive holding, whatever would happen to be, sets the standard for the game. In terms of this issue of consistency, it took me a long time in my life and career to figure out that really what coaches are talking about is that a play in the first quarter should be officiated the same way it is at the end of the game, whether it decides the game or not. So therefore, back to our original plateau here, we need to make sure we have a high bar for non-safety or conduct fouls. We need to make sure that we communicate. Picking up a flag is certainly a good thing to do. Now, we don't want to do that real often, but better for us to pick up a flag and then explain that we did not meet the qualifications of a foul than to leave a bad or a marginal flag down. Our communication with the sideline. First of all, we would do the same for you, coach. Our responsibility is to get it right. And as a crew, we just did that. Those sorts of things have to be on the tips of our tongue, as well as when they think a foul occurs and we don't throw the flag. We need to say, coach, that action didn't have anything to do with the play. And once again, we would approach that the same way for your team. All right, in terms of quality fouls, there are three aspects here that have to be clearly understood. And we'll get to the details in just a minute. It has to be visible, has to be material. And then the big thing that separates us as officials is, does it take something away? So the first thing, the easy part is visible. Most anyone with football background, including people in the stands, can see when something is visible. So that's a given. But the bottom line is we got to have things show up on film. And I'm going to show you at least one play tonight where a foul is not visible. All right, material. It gets a little bit tougher here. It has to be something that is defined in the rule book. In terms of holding, it's a grab and restrict, it's a hook and turn. In pass interference, it's early contact. It has to fit into one of those pre-described rule book violations. Here's the tough part. And if you really want to be good, and if you really want to be on a good crew, this is where we need to hang our hat. And that is, we got to make determinations in terms of, did the action take something away? Did it slow a potential tackler from making a play? You might have holding on one side of the field, but the play is already on the following hash mark. That player, for all intents purposes, is out of the play. Therefore, other than big time takedown, we're going to pass on that and make that a talk to. This takes patience. And again, it's something that if you will work on this and if you'll talk about it as a crew, you will get better at it. All right, so to have a foul, you got to answer yes on all three of these variables. Visible, material, take something away. Now, we won't go into detail because of the time factors tonight. I'm just going to tell you that in my own experience, I know this works because in my own career, In a year where I did not have any postseason experience, I had basically 2 fouls directly attributed to me. And for a deep wing, that was quite a few. By applying the quality foul principle, I reduced my foul rate in my games almost in half and had 8 postseason assignments in 7 years at the end of my career. So putting things through the quality foul filter works if you're willing to apply it. Okay, so if our flags do not determine our value in terms of officials or a crew, what does? Well, first of all, we got to control the game. It has to be safe. The behavior of the players and coaches have to be appropriate. After all, this is an educational experience. Number 2, we have to manage the game well. Our communication with the sideline and players is effective and prevents a number of things that might occur that we can avoid. Coin toss, something that oftentimes goes unappreciated. And obviously administering the game clock and the play clock. And also the chains should have that on there as well. Here's a big one. If you want to be recognized as an excellent crew, your crew has to be consistent. There has to be a clear understanding and adoption within everyone on your crew of the philosophies of the fouls have to be huge and they have to take something away unless there's safety or conduct. We let them play, we get the big ones. And then finally, we cover the field properly. Whether you're in 5, 7, 4, 3, whatever it is, that to the best of our ability and the prescribed mechanics that we have to work with, that we have our goal lines covered, we have the sideline covered, that we're working together as a crew effectively. Those are the things that are going to separate us. So in summary, we got to make sure that we slow down. And once again, in our video, I'm going to talk about that in terms of was the timing of our flag appropriate or were we too quick? Stay off of marginal fouls. If you take nothing else away from this presentation tonight, let this be it. Stay off of marginal fouls. Convince your crew that we need to have the big ones only, and we'll pass. We'll get the whales. We'll pass on the minnows. Make sure that your standards are high for every category, and continue right on through to the very end. And then another big one here is that you have trust and confidence in your brother or sister officials on the field so that we end up with the correct judgment. All right, we've got looks like about 15 plays here, just to illustrate. Now, this first play is going to involve 2 blocks to the top of the screen. The one that comes into our attention first will be by the tight end. And then closely thereafter, this wing back will come out and block as well. Now, what we're looking for here, whether this is your key or not, is does either one of the players take an unfair advantage over the other? And when you have good feet, when you like the tight end here with the defensive player, that's a standoff. That is just a flat out standoff, and there was no foul that would be appropriate there. The same thing with the wing back out in front. The reason why both players go down is that the defensive player threw the receiver out of the way. These are examples of actions, neither of which we want called fouls. You'll notice also that our deep wing is right on the goal line extended. The only feedback that I would offer there is to get that orange goal line marker out of the way so that you can back straight up if necessary. As you can see, this defensive player comes very, very close to smoking this deep wing. And if you'll simply back up to about where that orange marker is, you still have a great look at the goal line and the pylon. It will be much safer for you. And if necessary, you can even back up further. The last point would be you've got non-game personnel down there that have no business being that close to the field. The guy in the yellow marker, part of the chain crew, he belongs there. The guy looks like he's got a camera. There's a kid there. There's a person, looks like they're carrying maybe an iPad or something. All those people should be behind the white line before the snap. All right, next clip. All right, here we're going to get a correct call for DPI. Now, what I would like to have you do if we had, if we were going to take the time to like do a survey, I would ask you to tell me why this is a correct call. I hope that it would be fairly obvious to you that the answer would be that neither one of these defenders are playing the ball. At no time, well, that defensive back initially looked there, but then he's not playing the ball at the mesh point. And the contact that occurs has a detrimental effect on the receiver's ability to come up and play the ball. Now, the second guy, the safety coming over, if he had turned and was in position where he's looking at the ball, I'd say this is a nothing. But the fact that he does not look back at the ball at the key point makes him suspect. So here you could justify a DPI call on either one of these players. Now, notice our deep wing retreated, found the goal line, got stationary, and on a good timing basis through his flag. The only other point that I would make here is before stopping the clock, the status of this particular play is an incomplete pass. So the signal that we want to give after we throw the flag is incomplete pass, which of course stops the clock. We don't need to put our arms over our head to stop the clock simply because the timers have been instructed to stop the clock on an incomplete pass signal. So overall, good job, correct call. Can improve the mechanics simply by giving an incomplete pass signal. All right, next clip is number 137, Gregor. We're going to have trips to the top of the screen. Review the block by our tight end. Okay, go back to the snap. Now we're going to get a flag down by our short wing. Well, actually, it might be the tackle, but my point, no, it is the tight end. Is there restriction there? Absolutely, there's restriction. However, the player who was attempted to be held is involved in the tackle, and we end up with about a 2 to 3 yard loss. Now, that's a play that if we will hold our flag, we recognize, yes, okay, visible, material, and then wait to see if it took something away from that player. That's one that we leave in our pocket. And we give a warning to 88. And if the orange bench wants to know why there wasn't a foul on that play, the simple answer is whatever was there had no material effect. The player you think was being held made the tackle for a loss. End of conversation. All right, skip number 4 and go to 21. All right, now work with me here. We're also looking at the tight end. Now, tight ends don't always hold. We just happen to have a few of these that are coming up. What we want to review is the action against number 7 right at the 40-yard line at the mesh point. So if you run that back, first of all, finish the play. I realize this is primarily deep people, but our short wing does not finish this play. Now, we all know, or we think, that this is going to come back as far as the foul being enforced. But let's say this runner is tackled for a relatively short gain, and the coach decides to decline the foul. We don't have a dead ball spot. So as a crew, you need to talk about the importance of finishing plays. But let's look at the tight end at the bottom of the screen. Now he comes out, wraps up. Initially, he was outside of the frame of the body. which makes him suspect. And then, as you can see, when he was defeated, when his feet were defeated, rather than to let number 7 go, he grabs a hold of him. This is a correct call for holding because it's visible, it's material, and it took something away. It resulted in the player gaining probably another 5 yards, and he met the line to gain. So this is a correct call. Now, from a key standpoint, deep wings, back judges, particularly with the motion, back judge, you might transition over to this this tight end. That might be a look for you as well. Clearly, our deep wing would have the wide guy, but obviously he is not pressed. So you're going to check down deep wing, at least initially on this play, and we could realistically have 3 sets of eyes in this block right at the point of attack. Right about now is when the deep wing needs to be aware of that engagement between the wide receiver and the defensive back. Before then, you got to check down. We're not going to referee error. We've got to take the first active engagement that comes into our purview. Okay, next clip should be number 49. Now here, I want to talk about the back judge involvement in this play. So first of all, let's look at our formation. We've got trips to the top of the screen so that we know initially our back judge is going to be looking at one or both of these slot backs. Initially, our deep wing at the bottom of the screen has one-on-one coverage that's going to result in a fade pattern that's going to come down that sideline. But as this ball goes airborne, back judges, you get a transition over here. So let's look at the timing of this particular play. We're going to get a flag down. Now, again, if we had some form of audience participation, I would ask you what the criteria was for that particular flag. Now, I will grant that this is a long ways away. That's being filmed from the press box at the University of Michigan, and it doesn't zoom in. We don't have a TV view, but other than the offensive player sticking his arms out, there's not something that is obviously visible that the defensive back did to him. There's some contact there, but we know that contact in and of itself is not a foul. We got to have something that's taken away. Now, back judges, as you transition to this sort of action, you got to have an opinion. You got to have an opinion. Now, he is pretty casual coming over here, and I don't know if he's thinking about picking up or defending this guy's flag, but in a situation like this, I would expect that the back judge without a flag would come in there and say, what do you have? What do you have? Okay, you have DPI. What is your category? Is this grab and restrict? Is this a cutoff? Is this not playing the ball? I don't see anything that is an obvious foul. The only thing that really seems to be an indicator is the receiver who sticks his hands out like, oh my gosh, I'm being robbed. Now, that's not to say there isn't a foul there, but I would think that this defensive or this deep wing would be able to defend this call, to be able to say he grabbed him and took a step away. All right, if he's that definitive, okay, we'll go with it. But back judges get involved in these kinds of plays, whether you have a flag or not. The other thing that obviously you saw is that we had a camera person way too close to the sideline. No business being up there. You've heard me say multiple times in the past that the lenses can pick a gnat off a fly's fanny. So they don't need to be that close to get a good shot. Get them the heck out of there so that your safety is protected as well as theirs. Okay, next clip. All right, this is going to be a correct call. This is going to be a late hit out of bounds at the bottom of the screen. Now, you'll recall in the PowerPoint that we talked about that there's no latitude for safety fouls. Now, the thing that you have to keep in mind is there truly has to be a safety issue. Now, here, quarterback becomes the runner. Defensive lineman is upset because he's had to run around and chase this guy, and he's not happy about the fact that now he's got to run all this distance over to the sideline. The guideline that you need to follow is that when the runner is going north and south along the sideline, we are going to give more latitude to the tackler in terms of hits near the sideline. Here, he's angling out of bounds, and by the time this contact occurs, he's got 2 feet out of bounds. That's a foul that we want called. It's a safety issue. We have a chance to lose the game from a control standpoint if we don't get these kinds of fouls. But the other takeaway is if this quarterback, this runner is going north and south, and he gets his clock cleaned over there when he's still trying to gain yardage, that's on him. And that ought to be the communication. You can see the quarterback has let up. He's going out of bounds at an angle. He gets 2 feet down out of bounds, and the defensive lineman makes contact with him, forceful contact, takes him down. Now, if he comes over there and bear hugs this guy and holds him up, that might be a talk to, but that's not something we want fouled. One more time here. Watch his feet. Out of bounds. I'm upset as a defensive lineman, and I'm going to take my shot. Now, be careful about the player that just fouled. You know, if we'll run it back one more time, we get kind of excited here. We recognize that we got a foul, but we got to remember that we got to take care of players. All right, the umpire is going to come over here. The quarterback should be chased by the referee. We got to make sure that nothing further happens over here in terms of getting the white players out of the home team bench. Okay, you can see we end up with 3 people right in there within 6 feet of each other. There'll be time to confer and confirm that we have the same foul. We just need to make sure that we don't forget about our players in a dead ball situation. Good call, correct call, a foul that we need made. A crew gets it. Last point, try to throw your flag so it ends up into the field of play. Whether it's the bench that's happy with your foul or not, flags have come up missing. So try to get that flag out into the field for a couple of reasons. Number one, so you get it back. But number two, it's going to be much more visible if this flag is out in the field as opposed to in the bench. Okay, Gregor, next clip should be 105. We're going to miss a hold, a grab and restrict at the top of the screen. See what happens here? This wide receiver out here, probably a bigger, stronger person who can dominate this guy without fouling, decides that he's going to demonstrate his wrestling skills and take this guy to the ground. You know, that's a takedown, and takedowns we're going to get in this particular case. So grabs him, he's outside of the frame. And now I'm just going to dump you just to show you that I can kick your butt. That's a foul we want called. Now, let's look at this from the standpoint of mechanics. So if you'll go back, all right, we got trips to the top. Stop it, Gregor. All right, if you go, all right, from here, nobody's pressed. So we've got short wing, deep wing, back judge, all with the responsibility of the players in the trips formation. None of them are pressed. So we're going to keep a really, really wide look. Now, this play is going to develop into a screen pretty quickly. It's going to be pretty obvious that one of the players here is going to be the intended receiver, and the other 2 people are going to be in blocking mode. We know that the short wing has to make the determination forward backwards. We also know that the short wing has to determine and confirm that we have the process of the catch completed in the event that we end up with a fumble, whether it's caused by a defender or whether it comes out of there because he hits it with his thigh board. We need to know that originally or not, we had control of the ball to the point where the process has been completed. Right now, as this rolls along, back judge, you should look first inside. So you got that engagement with number 2. Deep wing, you're going to take the guy widest, which happens to be the player number 88 that fouls here. Now, if we get hung up where we're watching the ball carrier or watching the catch, we're going to miss this. It's going to be easy to miss because we're ball watching. You've got to train yourself to know where the ball carrier is, but to put your primary focus on your key at the point of attack. Now we back up pretty well. We keep our cushion and then we come up. It's a low impact tackle. And if you remember, we talked about that. So we don't need the deep wing coming up, rushing the stage here. This is pretty standard football. Nobody's doing anything to anybody else. So we don't need to rush up there. We need to keep a wide vision in the event that somebody decides to do something unnecessary, would be a push or a taunt or something like that. Okay, next clip. We're going to get, okay, that's the same, that's the end zone view. What we're going to get here is a good no call because both of these players are going to be looking at the ball. Both looking at the ball. There's a collision. As long as you can, in your own mind, determine that the defensive back is actually looking at the football and maybe misjudges it. In other words, it's a legitimate attempt to play the ball. This is a good no call for feet entanglement. Now it's close. You know, it looks bad. It's one of those, if you go back to the original slide of the PowerPoint, looking bad is not a foul category. And the answer to the coach is they're both looking back at the ball, and when their feet get tangled, that's not a foul on either player. And again, I'll grant you that it's close because it appears that this defensive player takes a little shorter route to the ball than actually where the ball is coming down. But the idea here, and the reason why this is on the screen, is to remind you that when both players are looking back at the ball, both of them get latitude in terms of contact because they're both playing the ball. Okay. Gregor, if you'll go now to blindside block, a couple categories up. There you go. All right, we've got 4 clips to look at here. Now, the first thing that I want to emphasize, there are going to be a lot of gobbledygook that's going to occur at the top of the screen, a very technical term, gobbledygook here. But we're going to have a player that's going to change direction. He's going to cut back. And of course, anytime we get cutbacks, that changes all of the blocking angles, and we end up with a lot of people that potentially could block in the back. Now, again, if you are concentrating on the ball carrier, you're going to miss a lot of football out here because you've got players all over the place that are potentially going to block a player in the back. Right there, he chooses. Now, if number 11 shoves the player attempting to make the tackle, even though the contact may be slight, see, they break, Now it's hard. It looks like to me that the defensive player just dove and got nothing but turf, that he wasn't pushed from behind. Blocks from behind can be slight to have an impact. When players are moving very, very quickly, it doesn't take much to take their speed and balance away. In that particular case, it doesn't appear that there was a foul. So the whole idea here is, first of all, we have to see the entire action to be able to judge it as being a foul if we have a flag. If not, do not guess. We are horrible. Our judgment goes way, way down when we go, oh, I think he got it. Think is not a category for a flag. All right, now there are a couple other things that happen here. We're going to get, well, let me back up. Defensive or deep wings. Hands on hips, not an acceptable position at any time, body language wise. Your hand should be at your side. There should be a slight break to your knee in an athletic position. This is not what we have in mind. Okay. Now, there's going to be a potential late hit, a potential targeting on the ball carrier. Now, keep in mind, and I think first of all, you will see that while it's close, this runner is still up at the time that this tackler is committed to come in and finish this play. So I would say this is not a late hit. It just is not, it's within the realm of playing football and finishing a tackle. We're not going to have much of a game if we're going to call that a late hit. The point that we have to be aware of is when a tackler, when a defensive player or any player for that matter exposes the crown. And as you can see, he keeps his head up pretty well there. So we're probably not going to end up with a targeting simply because the player was well schooled, kept his head up to make this tackle. But if that crown gets exposed, now we have the potential of a targeting foul. And of course, that is a safety foul. And we're going to nab that. We're going to get it. We're going to protect the players. Here, this would be a good talk to this player. Hey, your timing was okay. Make sure you keep your head up. You know, that's positive officiating. It's preventative officiating, and we want to do that whenever and however we can. Now, this coach on the white sideline, he's probably thinking one of two things here. Either this is a late hit on my star receiver, or maybe I'd be willing as a coach to accept a targeting foul, of which it is neither. So our explanation there would be that the timing of the tackler, it was close, coach, but the timing was legal. And secondly, the action with the helmet, he went over the player, and therefore there's not a targeting foul. Okay, next clip. There should be clip 100. We're going to get a wide receiver that's going to slant from the top of the screen. Stop it, Gregor, hold it. Let's go back to the snap. All right, whose key is the wide receiver at the top of the screen? Everyone should be thinking deep wing. And you can see the deep wing's feet at the 25-yard line. So he is about 22 yards off the line of scrimmage, certainly acceptable. I would say from a mechanical standpoint, I would like to see his left foot a little further behind. Reason being that if he needs to turn and go, he's already in that athletic position to be able to make a quick jab step and get underway pretty quickly. But the main point here is this is the deep wing's key. And when you see this wide receiver slant towards the middle of the field, all those warning bells should be going off in your head, because you got all kinds of possibilities here. You've got a possibility of a crackback block by the receiver. You've got a possibility of a pick with OPI. You've got the possibility of him getting rung up by a linebacker coming in there. So you got a number of possibilities, and it certainly deserves our full and undivided attention until he is free of foul. All right, now let it run. And as you can see, this wide receiver is going to come down and is going to take a pretty good shot on a safety. Now, back judge has a flag. Was that a flag by the deep wing? Looked like it might have come out there at the very end. Let's see it one more time. I don't see a flag from the deep
Back
wing.
judge.
Yeah, that I was looking to see if the deep wing also threw a flag, and he did not. You got to have an opinion here, all right? You didn't throw your flag on your key. So at the very least, deep wing, you've got to come into the back judge and say, what do you have? You know, I've got targeting, I've got a blindside block. And then the conversation needs to ensue. Well, that was my key, and I saw him come down, and in my estimation, he led with the hands, and that's why I did not have a flag for a blindside block. Now, here I think you can see that any arm contact occurred after the shoulder contact. For this to be a legal play, the initial contact needs to be with the extended arms, which does not happen here. The action by the arms is sort of a push off after the heavy contact that occurs. So this is a correct call for a blindside block. It is a safety foul and one that we want to get, but mechanically as a crew, we've got to do a better job, A, sticking with our keys, and then B, if someone throws on your key and you don't have a flag, or even if you do and there are two flags down, we need to get together and we need to talk to make sure A, that we have a foul, and B, that we get the right foul if there's going to be one. All right, this should be number 70. Here we're going to get a correct call for a blindside block. And once again, our deep wing gets it this time, okay? Which is good. And the reason why this is a foul, once again, is that we don't lead with the hands. If this, you can knock the guy butt over tea kettle if you lead with your hands. That did not happen here, so this is a correct call for a blindside block. Now, we have to continue to officiate. We get the flag, we start moving forward. You know, we're going to be able to locate this flag pretty accurately. You know, we can resurrect where this action occurs. You know, it's going to happen somewhere around the 50-yard line. So after the play, we can come up and reposition our flag. We've got to finish plays. So throw the flag, continue with your retreat so that you keep your cushion. And remember that you still have responsibility for other blockers on this play. You might have two fouls. You also have responsibility for the runner and what might happen to him, okay? So lots of talking points on a play like this. Keep officiating. See, he wants to come up and relocate his flag, or I'm not sure what's going on there, but we just need to make sure we finish a play. All right, last clip of the night is number 66. This is going to be an IBB at the point of attack. Now, it's one that it's understandable why maybe we miss it. But if you look at number 88, this is not a side block. It's not what I would deem to be a blindside block. It's just a block in the back. He is in chase mode, even though, you know, he's not technically chasing the guy. He's got to get around and get this to the side and lead with his hands as opposed to this block that occurs basically into this guy's back. Now, we don't know whether this defensive back could have made a play on this and potentially kept this to maybe a 3 to a 4 yard less of a play, it ends up in a first down. So this responsibility for this particular block needs to go primarily to our deep wing on that side of the field. And back judges, you've got a piece of this pie as well. You should be looking at this by now. You should have transitioned to this. Number 2 is free of foul. So you should be checking down to point of attack. And we need to get a flag down for a block in the bag. And the spot of the foul would be somewhere around like the 26-yard line. So we're going to enforce that back. It's going to be second down and something, probably more than 10. But you get the idea. We have to work in concert with one another. We can't be watching the ball. We need to know where the ball is. But at the same time, the reason why we need to know where the ball is so that we can determine point of attack and follow the movement of the players to be able to see where they're next going to go. All right, Gregor, if you'll bring me up here. We had a little bit of an abbreviated video session tonight. We're getting close to the beginning of the season. We've been hitting it pretty hard. I'm hoping that if you've not been able to join us in person, that you've been checking out the podcast that we have. So next week, Tuesday of next week, the 15th, will be our next training session. And I haven't quite made up my mind yet in terms of everything that we're going to do, but it's definitely going to involve the kicking game, both punting and free kicks. And then we'll probably wrap up the preseason the following week with sort of a number of topics, including catch, no catch. But the session next week on Tuesday, the 15th, I'll have to get with you in terms of a time. I've got a place that I need to be at 7 o'clock. In short, I need to go to a township board meeting about a local issue to make a public comment, and then I need to get home and get with you as far as this session. So I'm thinking probably 7:30, but I'll check with the township clerk to see when public comment is. If it's at the end of the meeting, then we may well go ahead and start at 7 o'clock. So there may need to be some, I'll need to get with you in terms of firming up a starting time based on the details of this township board meeting. So any questions or anything for the good of the order tonight? Gregor, I see a comment in the chat.
Yeah, Rich, it's just Troy saying thanks.
Beg your pardon?
It's just Troy saying thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Always my pleasure. Should be coming up to scrimmages here pretty quick. The thing that I would say to you is even though those scrimmages tend to be, you end up sending 2 or 3 people to one end of the field, and it would be easy. We're really not working normal mechanics. The thing that I would say to you, regardless of what position you work, is make sure that you get some reps from where you are going to be working that opening night of the football season. If that's back judge, other people on the field should be accommodating, covering the line, or referee coming up to cover a line of scrimmage position so that you can go deep. If you're a deep wing, you should make it a point to get a few snaps from your position to get used to that starting position, and then transitioning with your shuffling to keep your cushion, et cetera, so that we're not hitting the field that first game and we don't have any reps under our legs. We need to make sure that we're getting a few, the more the better. So don't apologize for that. Everyone is there to get some work in so that you're better prepared to start the season. From the standpoint of your crew, I would hope that you would already have been talking about various aspects of what you're going to be doing as a group this year, as well as heading into your first couple of games. If you have the benefit of a freshman or a JV game out of the chute, that's advantageous because we don't get a lot of snaps in scrimmages. So I would also urge you in those early lower level games to make sure that you get reps at the position that you're going to work on Friday night or Thursday night to start the year. So again, you're not going out there blind, you're not going out there cold. Because we need you to be ready. You need to be ready individually. Your crew needs you to be ready right off the bat, whether you're a back judge, deep wing, short wing, umpire, whatever it happens to be. You need to have your feet underneath you because some of our bigger games are going to be interconference games, non-conference games. They're going to be played that will have playoff implications at the end of the year. You know, the beginning of the year last year, Orchard Lake St. Mary's played Adams, two teams that have been to Ford Field pretty regularly. So those are the kinds of games that are very, very important, even though they're the opening games of the year. Okay, enough of that. I think you get the idea, but you need to be thinking about this and you need to be strategic in your thinking. Referees, if you're on this call, you should be talking with your people in terms of making sure that they are being strategic and planning accordingly so that when the bell rings, that we're ready to answer and that we get a strong performance right out of the gate. All right, so next week, I'll get back with you with a time. We will send out the recording of this as soon as it's ready to go. And just keep working hard. And thank you for your attention and your support for this program. So next week, Tuesday, we'll figure out a time. Take care, everybody.